not, he won't send the product decryption key. So the customer sends anything less than the actual amount, the merchant does not provide the decryption key. So in this case, fair exchange is not compromised. The other possibility is that the merchant actually has behaved in the correct manner, but the customer lies about him. The customer goes and tells the trusted third party that, I have sent everything to the merchant, but I've sent the correct payment, but I have not received the item in return. But in order to go to the trusted third party, he needs to produce, all the things that he had given the merchant. So he needs to provide the purchase order, the payment token, and all these details he needs to provide the third party. The third party can verify these, all these items are correct, and the third party can get in touch with the merchant and, ask him to resend the product. If a customer receives the product multiple times, we assume that it's a digital product, and receiving the item multiple times is the same as receiving it exactly once. So in this case, the customer, when he gives the third party all this stuff, he's also giving the payment token. And so fair exchange is not compromised. The other possibility is that the merchant can behave maliciously. So the merchant might receive the entire payment, but he may not send the decryption key. So in this case, or he might disappear before sending the decryption key. So in this case, the customer again complains to the trusted third party, and when he makes such a complaint, he provides all these information, the purchase order as well as the payment token. The third party tries to get in touch with the merchant, and if the merchant cannot be contacted, then there's an escrow of the product that is resting with the trusted third party, which is M. So the trusted third party in such a case forwards M to the customer. So in this case also, the merchant cannot really get away without providing the product. So fair exchange is not compromised by our protocol. The other property that we were looking for is that the customer must, which is the cross-validation, which ensures that the customer, before making the payment, the customer will have the assurance that the product he's about to receive is actually the product he's interested in. And so this cross-validation he does with that he compares the product key MK1 cross K2 with K1, and if M and M hat are identical, then his validation will succeed. So with this, he will know whether he's going to receive the correct product before actually making the payment. And the third property that we were interested in is analysis of anonymity. And here, what we are trying to ensure is that no single party has enough information that can link the customer to the merchant or the customer to the transaction. And moreover, the parties cannot collude and get this information. So now, in order for two parties to collude, they must know each other's identity, and they must also have some common piece of information pertaining to this particular transaction. And if we look at the information possessed by all the different parties, we see that it is not there. So we have so the leftmost column indicates all the information that are of interest, and each of the rows says what is the information possessed by each party. For example, the customer's bank knows the customer's ID, the customer's bank knows his own ID, but he does not know the merchant bank's ID or the merchant's ID or the third party's ID. The customer's bank knows the customer's account, but he does not know the merchant's account or the purchase order, or he knows the actual public key of the customer, but he doesn't know the one-time public key of the customer, and he knows about the payment token. Similarly, the merchant's bank doesn't know the customer's ID. There is some error here, actually. He actually doesn't know customer's bank ID or customer's bank ID, because that the customer's bank has signed the payment token using a group key. So in that case, the second entry should be no. So in this case, if we analyze what are all the information known by the different parties, so we'll find that the merchant knows almost the maximum number of information, and the merchant knows the identity of the merchant's bank, so he can actually collude with the merchant's bank. And in this case, the merchant will not learn anything new from the merchant's bank, because the information possessed by merchant's bank is a subset of the information possessed by the merchant. Similarly, the merchant might know the third party's identity, and so he might collude with the trusted third party. But again, the information possessed by the third party is a subset of the information possessed by the merchant. So in this collusion, the merchant will learn nothing new. So the merchant can basically collude with merchant's bank as well as with the third party. And even if he does this collusion, he will not learn any new information, and he will not learn the customer's ID. So in this case, anonymity has been achieved. And so in this case, we have come up with a protocol that ensures fair exchange, cross-validation, and anonymity of the customer. And we have tried to minimize the use of the trusted third party. So the trusted third party is used only when something goes wrong. So if the merchant or the customer fails or behaves maliciously, then only the trusted third party is contacted. Otherwise not. And in a subsequent work, we are investigating how the work of the trusted third party can be distributed across different trusted third party, so that a quorum of them must get together, and that way, we minimize the trust on a single third party to get the information. So with that, I conclude my talk. Do you have any questions? Yeah.
So the banks are actually also third parties, and there's some trust in them. So for example, what if the two banks are the same?
Yeah, if the two banks are same, there might be, it might be compromised, yeah. But if the two banks are co-located, then there might be. But if they are distinct, then, and this is a very, subtle issue actually, whether we should trust of course, if it's a Swiss bank, we will always, trusted. We know that they won't cause any anonymity breach. But otherwise also, banks are trusted to some account. And one might argue that even if you encrypt the bank account information, but ultimately at the clearinghouse, when it has to be physically transferred, through that, you can, get this information. But we have to assume that, the clearinghouse is trusted to some extent, and this information won't be revealed.
So in the threat scenarios, technically the banks are not included, am I right?
Yeah.
So there was malice on the part of customer?
Or the merchant.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
People looked at using in this area simultaneity technologies, like, when there's no third party, but we get what we're sending to each other at the same time. And also there are mechanisms for assuring that no party is sending garbage.
Yeah.
Like in simultaneous contract signing, but of course you cannot use simultaneous contract signing here, but something like that.
Are you talking about gradual fair exchange where
something
you send
like that,
bit information?
Yeah, the bit cannot be random because you keep the other party honest through oblivious transfer and all of that. Have people done that?
No, I haven't come across anything. There have been some work on gradual fair exchange, but some people argue that gradual fair exchange is also not true fair exchange, because there's always one bit of difference actually.
But you can try both possibilities.
Yeah, both possibilities.
If it's one bit, it's no big deal.
It's not a big deal. Yeah. So there.